Okay, some politicians can get away with it. Our Minister of Economic Affairs is also no stranger to making statements that are like what? But yeah, so his private life, his opportunism. So it doesn't really. He doesn't really have. He doesn't really have, I think, a true political belief. He basically is a politician, and he kind of feels what he where the wind is blowing, and he's going in that way, to get a position. And he was already like that when he was in university, when he wanted to become the student president, and he became the student president. But very opportunistic. So that is going to be our next prime minister. So help us God. But exactly a character like Trump, I think he's a little bit less vile than Trump, but the same kind of fabric. I don't think anybody believes that Trump is doing this because he wants the best for the United States. He wants the best for himself, and that's what he has in common with Boris Johnson.
Because of the economy.
Yeah. So, but also because of his private interests. Actually, there was I think there was a 400 million claim that Deutsche Bank has on Trump that became effectively incollectible when the minute he became president of the United States. So he was in big financial trouble prior to him becoming the president of the United States. So I believe that there was a big interest in him becoming the president, not because he wanted to change the United States, but basically just in order to.
Why Deutsche Bank? He just some obligation.
Yeah. He was in a very long banking relationship with Deutsche Bank. And Deutsche Bank, because they took way too many risks in handing out loans, they actually supported him from different departments. But he has been receiving loans and paying back loans, from lending it from borrowing it from one part of the bank, and then paying it back with a loan from the other part of the bank, defaulting on his loans, etc. It was.
Oh, he did it before.
Yeah. But yeah, it was for the Deutsche Bank. Of course, you don't want to get into a fight with the President of the United States. So Boris Johnson is a politician like that. He just wants to be the president. He wants to have the power. He also has many difficulties with women, like no rape cases, things like that, but just like what we saw in the little fragment on the television when the press is waiting in front of his house and he can't get in because his wife locked him out.
Why locked him out?
Yeah, well, probably because there was somebody else. But in front of the cameras. Yeah.
Interesting.
And well, he doesn't necessarily tell the truth. So, populist leaders. Then the question is, where does this come from? How come that people are are choosing people like that to represent them. I think that's the next question. I think that would take us into the next topic.
They like his character.
Yeah. Well, okay. So he has a charming character, like a kind of a, how to say that, not very reliable, but nobody really gets angry with him. The people can forgive him for his things because he makes you laugh, and he's kind of like charming. He doesn't seem to be that dangerous, but at the same time he's getting a lot of power, and he is, I believe, very dangerous because he will bring UK Brexit.
But he did good performance at the age of Mayor of London.
That the jury is out on that. Some people really believe it. I think he especially made a good performance during the Olympics. But other people feel that actually he left London with exploding housing prices, not taking care of the riots properly. So not everybody believes that he actually did a good job as a mayor of London.
But he is supported.
He's supported, yeah, by the Conservative Party. But I think that the Conservative Party, why would they support Boris Johnson? I thought the only reason why I can think is because of his charismatic.
He is charismatic.
Yeah. Personality. Because Farage, for example, he always has a one-liner. He always has people. No matter what you think about him, but people kind of look at him and they are kind of entertained by his one-liners, by these things. And Boris Johnson is a person like that. Not so much substance, but a lot of one-liners and very opportunistic, cherry-picking the facts but always ending with a good joke or something that make people laugh. And the fact that he's like his private life is a mess always and things like that, it's kind of charming.
It means he got lot of trust from people.
No, that doesn't mean. I don't think. I think what it means is that people don't trust anyone in politics anymore to be representing their best interest. I think that the reason why the Conservative Party chooses him, because they don't feel that they can ignore. They are really looking at the interest of the Conservative Party, not at the interest of the UK. Why they choose him is because they need somebody who can deliver on Brexit. Why? Because all their votes, like if you look at the European election results, almost everybody ran away from the Conservative Party and voted for the Brexit Party. So the Conservative the people who voted Conservative, they want Brexit. And they want to bring these people back into the Conservative Party. So somebody needs to deliver Brexit. On top of that, they need somebody with charisma, somebody who can appeal to a wider audience. And that's Boris Johnson, obviously. Who else should be that person? I mean, Theresa May didn't have any charisma whatsoever. She alienated people who would normally maybe consider to vote Conservative Party, but she didn't have that charm, that charisma. Very tenacious character. Couldn't make people laugh. that kind of character they didn't want back. So that kind of person they didn't want back. So the only reason why they select Boris Johnson, I feel, is because in the best interest of the Conservative Party.
Sure, I don't understand well why Boris Johnson.
But who else is going to do it? I mean, the result is the same, right? No matter which candidate they choose, he or she needs to deliver on the on Brexit. That's what the voter wants, and political parties in the business of getting votes. That's how they think. That's how they operate. So they are not voting necessarily in the best interest of the UK. They are voting in the best interest of the party. But it's a ridiculous situation, because I don't think there is anybody who believes that the UK will be better off. Outside the EU.
Yeah, that's the point.
Right.
But they people support him, right?
Right. So what is the real problem here? Is it the EU, or is it the fact that there are so many people in England who are disappointed and who are blaming the EU for something that is cannot be blamed on the EU, but can be blamed on globalization or globalism, new technologies, other things. But now everybody is pointing at the EU as being the culprit. So the way that Ian Bremmer puts it, he makes a difference between globalism and globalization. And why does he make that separation? Is because actually globalization in itself, open borders, free trade, open borders, brings more prosperity than a world with closed borders. So globalization in itself is good. It brings more prosperity. But globalism is basically a different concept that looks at it. Okay, so how is the individual? What is the role of the individual within the global world? And there you see that globalism has many losers. So globalization brings benefit, but globalism brings a lot of losers.
What do you mean? What's the point?
Oh, that's the next video. I'm trying to
No.
make it rich.
My question, those are losers. What does it mean?
What this means that actually looking, for example, at blue-collar workers in countries where wages are high, they are actually losing in a world of globalization. So as a in a world in globalism, their role, their individual role within a globalized society, they are losers. But that's not to be blamed on the EU. That's to be blamed on technology, on open borders and things like that. The economic system of globalization, I think most people agree on that open borders, free trade will create opportunities to raise the overall level of economic growth. What we see is now that the poverty and healthcare worldwide is much better than it was 20 years ago. There are much fewer people today who are suffering from starvation than there were 20 years ago. So the healthcare worldwide is much better than it was 20 years ago. And globalization is partly to contribute, is partly to...
Why healthcare is relating to globalization?
Because the overall economic welfare has brought much more prosperity in those countries. And therefore, we could introduce healthcare programs. But there are a lot of people who turn out to be losers. I think if you look at countries like India, countries like
You mean blue collar, for example, in the States?
in the States, yeah.
This is not globalism. This is a kind of IT revolution.
Yeah.
What this means? Globalism is caused.
So let's look at the video. I was just trying to make a bridge.
Let's have a look.
Oh, it's just a minute. Boris Johnson, does he have a good foreign diplomatic experience?
So actually, he used to be a minister of foreign affairs, no? So
I think he seems a very domestic politician.
yeah. So you saw the interview in that was held in the States. So a lot of people openly criticized him for his fantasies and his lack of of commitment to the truth.
Okay.
So that his reputation is not that good overseas.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, please go
Not
ahead.
that good. Not that good. So Ian Bremmer, basically Ian Bremmer is he's a professor in the United States. He also
Head of the U.S. group.
of the
Head of the Eurasian group.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's an interesting figure. He knows a lot about. He has a lot of opinions, let's put it that way, on global affairs. Actually, what I particularly liked about the video that I want to show is the Q&A session, because he's really well versed in everything. He actually heads a company with 200 people who are basically covering world affairs on. So basically, he came to the conclusion that he cannot cover all the world affairs because he is he's just spread too thin. So he started a company that has social scientists who take a special interest in different parts of the world.
I think 5 or 6 years ago, he published a book named G0.
G0.
There's no big country in the world.
Yeah. Actually, so that's one of his themes, like how the United States is basically losing its central role within the world order.
Yeah.
So the United States used to be very dominant, but nowadays, like United States, even though they are they're doing quite well economically, and they're still growing. But they are no longer the central power within the world. So yeah, that idea still is very much alive today. So in this video, he's talking about globalization, about how it helped us to eradicate poverty, how it helped us to improve our global health care. But it also has a side effect that wealthy nations, historically speaking, not only today but everywhere, once nations become more wealthy, the inequality within these nations start to increase, and that inequality is creating disenfranchisement. So economic inequality, anti-immigration, participation in wars, and social media that amplifies these opinions. So these are giving rise to populism. So
What does it mean, participation in wars?
participation in wars means that actually countries that participate in wars tend to be more
war involvement.
they tend to be more people tend to be more polarized in their political preferences. So countries that participate in war, they tend to vote more radical to the left or to the right. So there has
You
been
mean this means they like wars?
no.
What mean wars?
Wars. So the only thing that what it means is that actually polarization starts to occur if countries engage in war. So what they researched is the voting behavior of people living near from military bases. So where relatively many family members are enlisted as military personnel. And they found that especially around these bases, voting behavior is different from other parts of the country because of their direct involvement in war. There is more sympathy for Bernie Sanders, and there is more sympathy for the other side of the spectrum, Donald Trump.
Downtown.
Yeah.